Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kathrine and I'm a powerlifter on the Danish national team for equipped powerlifting, and I've been powerlifting since 2004. That was my last year as a junior. That also means I'll be turning 45 this year, so I'm an M1 lifter now. I had my first competition in 2004 as mentioned, and my first international competition was in 2005. And in light of the recent rule changes in the IPF that have been heavily discussed on the internet, I thought I would make a short two-part series of changes in powerlifting or in the IPF rulebook since I started powerlifting. And I made a list based on everything I could remember and based on some discussions I had with my husband and also some online searches. I may have forgotten some things and you're more than welcome to add to that in the comments. So in this first part of the video, I want to discuss changes to each of the three lifts: squat, bench press, and deadlift. And probably not surprisingly to any of you, most of the rule changes involve the bench press. So I'll just quickly go over the squat changes and the deadlift changes before we dive into the changes to the rules of the bench press in my time in powerlifting. And I have some notes here on my tablet, so if I look down once in a while, it's just to consult my notes. So first of all, when talking to my husband yesterday about the squat, we thought there used to be a rule about the degrees of forward lean allowed in order to get the squat command. But when I searched online, I could only find that that was a recommendation in coaching rules or coaching recommendations, and that this was recommended in order to comply with the actual rule, which was that the bar could be placed no longer than one bar width below the shoulders. And that was a rule implemented to prevent forward lean. And then around maybe 2008, I'm not really sure, that was removed from the rule book and changed to in an upright position. And then that will be changed again this year to remove the extreme low bar squat once again. And then everything else I could find regarding the squat were not actual rule changes, but only specifications to what the rules were supposed to mean. Then regarding the deadlift, and if I can find a photo, I'll insert one because nowadays that will look really funny. But in my first year of lifting in 2004, the long socks were not yet a requirement. So a lot of people lifted in short socks, and that rule was changed obviously for hygiene reasons because there was a lot more bleeding on the bar than what we see nowadays. So I actually did my very first competition in short socks and also in conventional stance. And again, everything else I could find were like more specifications to what the rules were supposed to mean. And I think there have also been some specifications regarding the platform, but that doesn't only include the deadlift. But I have a really funny photo showing how important the platform is. And if I can find that one, I will insert that one as well. And now onto the very long list of rule changes in the bench press. And the first one I'll mention, that is actually one that was removed sometime before I started powerlifting. So today we all know we have the press command, but there used to be a clap instead of the press command. They then removed that, so there was no actual press command. It was the responsibility of the lifter to judge their own pause on the chest. And that obviously led to a ton of no lifts due to lack of pause, or what the referees perceived as the lack of pause. And I think that was the red card failure back then. And that was changed again, I want to say somewhere around 2008, 2010 or so, to introduce the press command that we know today. And we were really nervous, most of us, when the rule was changed, but I have to say that was definitely for the better. the first year there was some hiccups with extremely long pauses by some referees, but it was the same for everyone in the same flight. So I feel like, yeah, 99.5% would be positives regarding this press command rule. Then let's see, also the grip on the bar. So we know that the distance between the rings is 81 centimeters and you have to cover the rings. That's how it is today. It used to be that the distance between your fingers still had to be 81 centimeters, but you could be off center. You didn't need to cover both rings, but that was still a maximum distance. But obviously that's really difficult to judge. The chief referee doesn't have a measuring tape with him. So I think overall that was also a very good rule change. It only negatively affected very few people who were built crooked and therefore had an advantage to also having a crooked grip, making the lift more even. And talking about even, that could lead me to the next strange rule that was fortunately abolished. When I started powerlifting, uneven extension was not allowed. So no scissor movement. When they removed that rule, they changed it, downward movement was obviously not allowed either, but now it's only downward movement is not allowed. And I will assume that's a safety issue, because then otherwise it will be kind of, did the spotters take the bar too early or so on. So even though it's annoying that downward movement is there, I guess it's better than the alternatives with 1 million relifts and overrules and whatever. Let's see what else we have. So if we then go by the starting position, I already talked about the grip width. Then we have the shoulders, that's the same. Regarding butt on the bench, it used to be in the old days the same as what it is now. Then at some point they changed the rules to saying specifically 50% of the glutes needed to be on the bench, and they had some illustrations in the rules. But I think they figured out that was way too difficult to actually judge, so they went back to this. It's the glutes that have to touch the bench, and no visible daylight is allowed. I think the rules, I'm not a referee, so don't exactly quote me on this, but I think the rules state something in the order of no change to the chosen position of the shoulders, head, shoulders, buttocks, and feet, or something like that. Then if we talk about feet, it used to be not that the entire sole had to be on the floor, but the length of the foot. So you could actually turn your foot sideways. I don't think a lot of lifters did that, mainly smaller women that were quite flexible. They then changed it initially to feet flat on the floor, but no position changes allowed. So if your foot slipped due to a slippery platform, it was an automatic no lift. And obviously that's not fair to the lifters. So I'm very happy with the current rules that the feet can slide flat on the floor, because generally when the feet move, it's not the lifter's fault. I have very little leg drive, and I've even had my feet move if the platform was just not up to standard. Let's see. Another interesting one. There used to be an elbow rule, but not an elbow depth rule. So the rule was, I don't remember the exact percentage in the rule book, but if you couldn't straighten your elbow 100%, you had to go to the doctor, and he would then write that the full extension of the elbow is 10 degrees less than normal or whatever. You then had to bring that paper to the weigh-in, and then when you entered the platform, you had to point to your elbow or both elbows if that was the case. And I know some lifters who have osteoarthritis or have had elbow surgery, they had that issue. So I think they were happy with the elbow paper, and they had some difficulties in the first couple of years after the rule change, until the referees kind of found the line along the rules that say full extension. And for some lifters, full extension is not a straight elbow, and for some it's even an overextension, unfortunately. So yeah, I think overall now it has very little influence on the lifts, but it did in the first few years, I would say. Let's see. Yeah, and then some of the more recent rule changes. You can no longer put your feet on the bench while setting up. And then also the elbow depth rule that we all know and either hate or love. So that you the elbow depth rule, meaning your elbow has to be lower than your shoulder. I'm a long-armed lifter, so I will never have a problem hitting depth. But in my personal opinion, I feel like this rule takes away the physical advantage of a select group of lifters, primarily the very flexible lifters with short arms and a big arch. And those are the same lifters who often have lower numbers on their deadlifts. And in my opinion, one of the things that I love about powerlifting is that so many different body types can be good at powerlifting. And that means people with long arms, short arms, long femurs, short femurs, thin, thick, fat, skinny, whatever, all heights, weights. Yeah, and it feels kind of discriminatory to me. I mean, for me personally, it's maybe a small advantage, but I don't know. I'm of the opinion I would rather see those insane numbers. I understand that other people feel like it's not a real bench press if you don't have a certain range of motion. And I guess that's the general opinion in the IPF. So they made this elbow depth rule to combat that. And you can then discuss, was this the best way of doing this? I guess maybe because, again, you couldn't measure a minimum range of motion, because then the chief referee would need a measuring stick or measuring tape, and yeah, that wouldn't take place either. Yeah, and then that will be changed a little bit. Probably March 1st is the latest news, as you've probably seen a ton of videos discuss already. A lot of lifters try to combat, or I don't know if that's the right expression, the elbow depth rule by then using a sinking technique. And now they really emphasize that heaving is not allowed. And that will hurt a lot of lifters, and not only the lifters who did sinking because of elbow depth, but also bigger lifters who just sink naturally because they have a lot of body fat in this area. Oh yeah, I actually forgot one rule that's also kind of that was really difficult to referee, and good that we don't have that rule anymore. There used to be you couldn't touch below the sternum rule. So again, that targeted a lot of the heavier guys because they like to lift to their belly, especially in the shirt. We only had equipped powerlifting back then. So they changed that, and now it's just you have to touch the chest/stomach, don't touch your belt. Yeah, and I think the only one I haven't mentioned that I've written down is the head rule. So it used to be that you could lift your head when lowering the bar to your chest. And again, that was something especially a lot of the bigger guys did, because then they could lift in a tighter shirt. And for some reason, I think the reasoning was safety. I don't actually remember. It's been a lot of years. They got rid of that. So now the head needs to stay on the bench. And that obviously led to people experimenting with hairstyles. And then that, as I recall it, a few years later led to the rules that your hair can't be in the way of the judging. So the referee or the chief referee or the jury can request that you put your hair up or like to the side or whatever. Yeah, so I think that's it for the bench press rules. I probably forgot something. So I'm curious to see or hear if any of you who have been in powerlifting a long time as well remember any other rule changes while you've been lifting, and if you remember the year that was changed, that would be interesting as well. In part 2 of the series, I plan to discuss more general rule changes that affect the entire competition. So for instance, the weight classes, age categories, equipped and classic lifting, setting records, etc. There are a bunch of things that we consider weird now that used to be allowed back in the day. So thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I would appreciate a thumbs up and maybe a follow on my account. And I hope to see you in part 2 of the series. Bye.